was very difficult for me to ascertain how I was going to be able to manage a full-time career as well as be a mum. Even though I was offered the chance and I was offered the support, we spoke about a couple of separate roles. And obviously being a full-time 360 consultant, that's not something you can do in a couple of days a week, which is what I was wanting to do. So I came back as a resourcer administrator. So I was still helping do the recruitment by looking for candidates. I did that for, I think it's for about 3 months. Then I spoke with Lauren, who was the senior consultant at the branch at the time, and Lisa, and decided to come back full-time back into a consultant position. It gave me the opportunity to get used to being back at work, and the work environment as well, because during my maternity leave, a lot of the team's dynamics had changed, and it had been difficult for me to come in back as what I was doing in a team that wasn't the same when I left. So I found it was a good stepping stone back into where I was, really, progressed to senior consultant, and then I was offered an opportunity to join the business development team. And obviously, because of the role that I played in the team as a senior consultant, I had a lot of responsibility, a lot of clients. So I couldn't just up sticks and leave and do a different job. I needed to do a good handover and make sure whoever was taking over my clients knew what they were doing, and that the clients understood that it was going to be somebody else looking after them now. So we sort of worked on that for a good 2 to 3 months up until Christmas. And it was during that period, after I'd accepted the move into business development, that I found out I was expecting again. But no, even then I still progressed into business development from January, and then everything sort of went to pot because of COVID. Having to work from home from the beginning of March, and just because of how things were and schools closing and one thing and another. I spoke with Christian, my manager, and they were happy to rearrange my maternity so I could start it a bit earlier, but which meant I had to come back slightly earlier, but it's not, it's no problem. It was easier to start earlier with being at home, heavily pregnant with a 6-year-old having to homeschool. That's no fun. This maternity leave has been so different. The unknown constantly, being at home all the time, not knowing what's happening. Being a mum, you've got to be constantly prepared or over prepared. So I needed to organise childcare for 2 children. I needed to speak to parents, grandparents, see who could help, what times I was going to be able to do stuff and where I was going to be going. I was worrying about when the schools were going to go back, if the schools wasn't going to go back. And every time I spoke to Christian, he just told me not to worry about anything, because whatever was to happen, we'd work around it. So my hours at the moment are relatively part-time, 3 days a week. I think this experience with lockdown has made us aware that we haven't got to be so strict that you need to be in work to do what you need to do. Right. So for parents, that's like I don't know, it's a bonus, because that was one thing I constantly worried about. If the kids were sick, if I needed to leave to go and pick them up from school, having to be at home and then knowing that everything that I should have had to have done on my daily job would fall on somebody else's desk. And then, it doesn't matter who you are or what team you're in, that the resentment's there, like, for God's sake, I've got to do all that stuff now because she's not here. It does happen, and that was always something that played in the back of my mind, and hopefully now that's going to be something that I can be like, I can still do what I need to at home.
Joined the company, my youngest son became quite poorly and had to have extensive surgery. Essentially were brilliant. The day you got diagnosis, they were supportive. It was, don't worry about work, concentrate on your family, which took a huge lot of pressure off me as a parent. So when Michael had surgery, he was in theatre for about 5 hours, and the only text or message I got from work were complete support. Everything was taken off, which meant it was a huge relief for me as a parent, because obviously I can concentrate on my son getting better. Return to work was quite gradual. It was as and when you needed it. The support was fantastic, and it was something I really needed. A few years on that, everything's great. I'm now, as I say, got back to my career. I've still got some quite senior positions within the industry. And again, that is due down to support that I've had. One thing I've always made sure is the fact they've had time for the children. So when they were younger, it was always get home. It was always dinner around the table for us together to talk about the day, always help them with the homework. And yeah, there was some very, very long nights where once the children were in bed, that you were working exceptionally long hours. But unfortunately, that was what needed to be. Am I empathetic to parents? Absolutely. But what I want to say is I am equally in awe of single fathers or working fathers as well, especially during the pandemic when people are working at home, they've got to homeschool. It really is a real juggling act. And I've got to say, am I quite pleased I wasn't homeschooling? Yeah, very much so. But my heart does go out to the people that have done it, because hands off to him. And I'm sure there'll be a lot of parents say very, very grateful that the children are going back to school. Changed. I think many years ago, I remember going to a seminar, and I think there were 6 of us from the company, and I was the only woman, albeit I was slightly younger than everybody else. I do felt as though they thought you more of the assistant, you were the ones that got the drinks, etc. And at the time, I don't really necessarily think that they actually took you very seriously. And I think it wasn't until a few years later, when obviously you proved yourself within the industry, that people did start to take you more seriously. And I think over time, I think the balance has completely flipped over now. You can see the course of our company, it's the senior team it's a great balance. Everybody works very well. So yeah, I do think things have changed. I think people have been recognised, not just women, but I think the whole diversity of everybody now is being treated equal, rather than, that was a woman's job. Would I have liked to have been a stay-at-home mum? No, it wouldn't have suited me. But it is what it is. Many, many years ago, it was very much dominated by it was a male orientated business. Through most of the senior managers, directors were male. And I think this started to see a change, certainly when I first became a director 20 years ago. I think things started to change quite well, and I think we were recognised for what we could offer to the industry, and I think it's proved very successful for women. I do think it's a brilliant career for people to be in. People look at recruitment, and the progression you can make. It's phenomenal, and we are backed. We are really, really backed from an essential. Backed me all the way, so I'm very grateful for that.